Hello and welcome to the AiLive interview series. I'm your host, Vincent Martinez. So ladies, what do you do when your long legs are meant for walking, but you just can't find the right pair of jeans that fit? Well, you take your height back with Midheaven Denim. Our guest, a former fashion model, created a sexy high-end line for the longest legged women out there, and she joins us today to tell us all about it. So please welcome the mid-heavenly Kathryn Brolin to AiLive.
Hi. Oh, I love what you did there. The mid-heavenly. I love that. We use that too.
Right? Well,
Thank you for having
It's all
me.
yours. Oh, I love having you here today, Kathryn, for so many reasons. And let's start with really the first biggest main reason why you're here. Let's give a little shout out, a big shout out to your biggest fan. Who would that be?
My mama, of course. Aren't our mamas always
Debbie.
our biggest fans? Yes, she's the reason why we met.
Yes.
And also my walking business card, as I like to say. She really is. She's just the walking business card for all three of her children.
So mom, Debbie mom, thank you so much for bringing Kathryn into the world and into AiLive today.
I second that, mama, if you're watching.
Yes. Let's jump right in and tell your story, because you've got a really great story. You grew up in Atlanta. You were a fashion model. You've moved to LA. You met your husband, a super villain, a Marvel super villain husband, who is, I know, a sweetheart in real life. You started this amazing fashion business. So please tell us your story.
Oh gosh, I grew up in Atlanta, and I lived here until I went off to college, but I didn't go that far. I went to University of Georgia, which is in Athens, about an hour from here. So I went to Georgia and what did I get my degree in? Magazine journalism is what I got my degree in, with what we called a certificate, which was kind of like a minor of sorts, but like a little amped up version of getting a minor. And I did that in photography.
Yeah.
And took a little hiatus from Georgia, went over to Italy to Santa Reparata School of Art in Florence, and I studied photography there. And then I came back and graduated from Georgia, and very quickly got into the film industry, working for producers and then directors and actors. I was just kind of getting a very all-encompassing picture of what it meant to work in the film industry, because I was working for so many different people in so many different capacities and departments.
So behind the scenes. You were behind the scenes. Yeah.
That's right, which was interesting because that was also during the time that I really started to do more modeling work. So I was getting this really interesting experience, professional experience of both in front of and behind the camera, and figuring out what I liked. And of course it had nothing to do with my degree, which was hilarious to me that I had spent 4 years studying this thing that I didn't end up using in a very specific way. But I felt like all of the experiences I had had by going to Italy and studying art, and it just kind of helped to propel me into this industry that I felt like was full of hyper creative people and so many different talents. Everywhere I looked, somebody was doing something that I found interesting. And so it was really the best place for me to be in the start of my career, which was to be in front of so many different people doing work in so many different capacities that I was able to just like observe. And so I spent the first few years of my professional life just observing, and figuring out what really moved me. And eventually I ended up moving to LA, and I see now the connection between what I was doing in LA and what I do now. And that was, I got a job offer in the wardrobe department, which was not a department that I had sought after, but I got this opportunity to work in the wardrobe department for a movie. And my sweet boss, who's this lovely woman named Hope Sleepak, and she let me live with her while I worked on this movie. And I started to see the need for, I just recently put all these pieces together, actually. I just started to see that that there was a need for longer inseams, especially in denim, for some of the actresses that were working on the movie that I was working on. And I think that's when really subconsciously the idea for Midheaven started
a little aha moment.
Yeah, it was my little aha moment that I didn't really make moves in for another like 4 or 5 years, but that's kind of what kickstarted the idea. And as I was living in LA and I was doing this, you know, kind of quietly modeling on the side, which was so wonderful, but I had this kind of like pseudo quiet profession also happening, which I was able to kind of do my preliminary research for the company in. And I was sitting in castings and I was talking to girls about where they got their jeans. And gosh, somebody walks in with a pair of jeans that hits their ankles and everybody pounces on them, because most everybody was like 5'10", 5'11". So we would all ask where she got them. And there were a couple companies
that were doing your research.
Kind of like, yeah, these like novelty, longer inseam collections, but then they'd eventually retire them for whatever reason. So I feel like over the course of 4 or 5 years, I started to write this business plan and in my head of just what I would do. And that's eventually where Midheaven kind of sprang from. And then I just kind of took the leap. I think I was getting into my late 20s and I was just like, you know what? I really want to own my own brand. I really want to see where this would go. And this, you know, it was kind of like, it was coming up alongside what I was seeing to be the shift in social media, where you could actually start to promote businesses on social media and you could be the face of your brand if you wanted to. All of these things that always felt very far away from me. And so I just kind of took the leap and I went for it. And I started very small, which I'll talk to you about in a little bit, but started very small, put it out there on social media. And that's how I really started this company. And I just kind of never looked back.
So basically, there's a lot of glamazons out there that should be very grateful to you and your line of denim, right?
Yeah. I hope so. I mean, every once in a while, I'll get an email from somebody saying, I thank you for making a 36-inch long inseam. I really, really appreciate that. And I'm loving wearing these today. I'm like, yes, it's resonating for somebody other than me. Yes, okay, I'm on the right track.
Well, I do want you to tell us all about Midheaven Denim, about the collection and how it's growing. But something you said earlier, which I find very, very interesting, but also I think very helpful and useful to young, aspiring fashion designers. You know, we're taught to design, create, and produce a fashion collection.
Yes.
And I think that could be very overwhelming. You, not to shortchange, I mean, what you've done, I think, is also could be very overwhelming and tremendous amounts of work. But you went, rather than a collection, you went and designed a line, a fashion line, a line of denim. And I just think that's just, it's not whether one is better than the other, but it's definitely a different spin. So I think you can probably shed some really good insight on going that route, designing and creating a line and starting your business that way.
It was not intentional. I'll start with that.
Okay.
It was purely because of and I love talking about it in this way, because I think that it's so important for young people to know that there are options if you can't afford to go to school, or if you don't have the resources to be, you know, in this kind of like linear educational fashion into a professional existence. It's like, it was very bumpy for me. And I had no expertise in the field. You know, I was coming from working in the film business to all of a sudden creating a line of a fashion related product. I really didn't know anything in the beginning. And it was purely because of my own ambition to create it that it happened. And I think that that's what it boils down to, because if you feel it, you can build it. If you're passionate enough about it, you can build it. And so that's really what I started off with, was just this incredible passion to create one product. And it's a really funny just very serendipitous moment that I remember having walking down the street. I had never met this neighbor that lived 3 doors down with us. I was on a walk with my husband, but long before we were married. And this woman comes out of her house. I had never met her before. I'd seen her, but I'd never met her. She invited us in for tea, and I was sitting there at her counter, and she was asking me what I was doing and what I was interested in. And I said, I'm doing kind of, I guess, preliminary research for a company that I want to start, but I have no idea how to do it. And she said, well, what is it? I said, I really have this interest in creating a line of just long jeans for girls like me that need a couple extra inches of inseam on the bottom. And she was like, well, Kathryn, I worked in the denim business for 30 years and I could probably help you.
No way.
And it was just like one of those fate, crazy, this is what I'm meant to do right now moments.
It was meant to be.
And she did.
It was meant to be.
It was meant to be. But had I, kind of kept it on the inside and not wanted to talk about it until I was ready or felt like I was educated enough in the industry, I never would have had that moment. And I think that it was because of her introducing me around town, but also my willingness to be kind of like the new kid at the table and say, I don't know what I'm doing, please teach me, that I was able to get so much more than I probably would have trying to do that research on my own. And that was my school. That was me going back to school, not only for design, but also for business, like how to communicate with people in business. So I really wanted to start a line purely because I could not afford to do a full collection of everything that I had in my head. And I also wanted to see if it was a viable company. I wanted to see if the idea resonated for people as much as it did for me. So I said, I'm doing one product. I got really good with that one product. I said, I'm going to do 3 more before I'm going to launch this thing. And I had 4 products completed. And I remember that day when I signed on the dotted line to go into production on those 4 products. It was a big, big risk. And I put it up on social media. I said, I did this thing. What do you think? And we eventually sold out. It took me 6 months, but we sold out. We sold out of everything that I had made. And it was such a humbling, wonderful testament to, all it starts with is an idea. And all the difference is your willingness to kind of take the risk. So it just started to grow from there.
You have just shared, I just think, probably the most valuable piece of advice that we can offer our students and our young designers, and really in almost any field. And first of all, everything you said was, I think, really on point. But what really resonated with me was your honesty with, I couldn't afford a full collection. And the fact that it's okay. You can't afford a full-on collection. It's okay. It doesn't mean that is the end of your dream. That just means you get resourceful. And like in your case, you do one thing and you do it really, really good. And I hope
that's
that
right. I think that as creatives, you try and do everything all at once. You've got, if you're creative enough to want to pursue a creative business and you go to school for it and possibly put yourself into debt over it, it means that it's that worth it to you, right? And you're probably going to do what I did, which is use every cent of your savings doing it, which is what I did in the beginning. But that being said, sometimes it is just one product. Sometimes it is doing one thing and doing it really, really well. And that way, the inevitable mistakes you're going to make in the beginning are done in regards to one product as opposed to 16. And maybe your financial loss is going to be a little bit smaller than it would have, and you're teaching yourself all the lessons. So yes, I don't think that it's totally necessary to do a full collection. I mean, what graduates, person graduating from school and, wanting to do that really can. It's very rare.
Very few. Very, very few. Well, I tell you, I've got this belief that people who have really paid their dues give the best advice. And you've been really giving great advice here. So we're going to continue on that advice vein, because we have a segment, Kathryn, with the Art Institutes that we like to call on the show. We like to call it Students Want to Know. And we invite guests and students and friends to email questions to you. And this one specific student, Federico, I've got to give him some props. He has come up with some of the best questions that we decided we're going to keep all of them in the show. So I'm going to ask them, and please answer them to your best, okay? So the first question is, what advice would you give fellow creatives upon graduating, especially within the filmmaking and writing world? So Federico did his research. It looks like he did his homework on you.
Well, I love this question because I feel like it kind of pertains to any creative business and any person starting out in any creative field, but particularly in filmmaking and writing. I do think that the work can be done every single day, whether you're working for somebody or not. I think that a lot of people seek out work in the film industry to reach that standard that they want to exist within right away. And this is actually something that I've learned a lot through my husband, is you can do work in the area that interests you, no matter if people are watching it or collaborating with you or not. If you want to be a filmmaker, you have every resource now. You have no excuse to not make little movies or shorts, or if you're a writer, you have no excuse to not sit down and work on your writing every single day. I think that I made that mistake in the beginning. I was waiting for this like vehicle for my creativity that I could input my talents and immediately start making money in it and immediately start collaborating with the best people out there. And it doesn't work like that. Oftentimes you have people that will give you an opportunity to show them what you can do. And unless you've spent that time working and doing the necessary work, not only on your creative practice, but also yourself emotionally, like getting ready for that opportunity when it finally comes, it's going to be a long, long road. So I would say the advice that I would give anybody who's interested in filmmaking, writing, or anything creative is to actually do the thing that you want to do. You don't have to wait for somebody to call you a photographer to be a photographer. You just go out there and you start taking pictures and you develop your aesthetic.
Exactly.
You develop your way of telling stories through that medium. So I think that would be the best thing to start doing, is to start working on your craft. And also, gosh, have you ever experienced a time where there's never been more freelance people out there and people who want to collaborate? I mean, most of the creative projects that I've been involved with have been for totally for free. And that's some of the pictures that you're showing right now. We got to collaborate with a good friend of mine, Brian Bowen Smith, and he was wonderful. He met us in the desert one day. I had 3 of my model friends come. We shot the entire first series of pictures for Midheaven, and most everybody was doing that for free because they just wanted to be involved in something wonderful and creative, but the work had already been done on the back end. So it kind of made everything kind of come together, this full picture come together that was brilliant and so incredibly creative, but it was really because everybody was passionate about what they did and wanting to collaborate together in order to like create a product that they found inspiring. So that's what I would say.
You are
Start doing the work
me
now.
You are inspiring me, Kathryn. Thank you. So we have a few more questions that I want to ask from the same student, from Federico. So the next one is, do you currently, I love this one. Do you currently need any photographers or creatives for your company, Midheaven Denim?
I am always, always looking. Oh my gosh, especially in the photography world, I'm always looking for people who have a unique perspective, always. I think that it's so wonderful when I'm able to preview somebody's portfolio and like start to think about the way that I want to tell the story of Midheaven through the lens of somebody who I hadn't met before, who's doing something that I find inspiring. So of course, we're always looking for people. Always. We actually have an email account for portfolios that I'll have you tag after this video is over. But yeah,
we can also follow you on social media.
Yeah, that's a really great way.
If they follow you, Kathryn Brolin, which is very easy, that's just your name, that's your own personal IG account, and of course, Midheaven has its own IG account as well. So that might be also the fastest way to do it.
Instagram's the most amazing tool. Our email
Isn't it?
or our DM, yeah, our message inbox for Midheaven is a lot of we found models that way. We actually have found photographers that way. Yeah, that's an amazing tool. And our email is listed on the Instagram.
Fantastic. Okay, you might get hit up there, Kathryn.
I was about to say, Federico, I'm really looking forward to seeing your portfolio.
There you go. There you go. Let's see. Let's ask another question. I know we've got a couple more. Okay. I like this one too. What would you suggest photographers do to get noticed?
Photographers, I think like anybody, I think when you're putting your content out there on social media, I see the trends kind of lead, and we fall into this same thing with fashion and trying to do things that are outside of the box. There is something to be said for following trends, because obviously a trend is a trend because it's resonating for people in any given moment. But on that same note, I feel like the people that are willing to kind of do things a little bit differently are the ones that are going to get maybe noticed sooner. So if you do have a unique perspective, don't be afraid to share that perspective or that aesthetic. You know, if everybody's going the colorful route, maybe you go the black and white route, or vice versa. I've been noticing a lot of collage art lately, and I just called my colleague yesterday and I said, I really want to incorporate some collage art. And I know that I'm being deeply impacted by, you know, the Instagram accounts that I'm seeing of people that do that really well. But it's something that's new and it's fresh and it inspires me. I was even collaging. My husband walked in our room the other night and I was like collaging a baby book. So clearly I am very moved by this art form right now. But we're going to start to incorporate it on the website. And that's purely because I saw some 20-year-old photographer that was using collage art in her photography. And I just thought it was the coolest thing. So I'd say, you know, be willing to kind of take a risk and do things that are outside the box, because it will probably get you noticed. You know, and it's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah, and I think if I can piggyback on what you said just earlier about the power of Instagram. So do something different and use Instagram to get your message out there. You know, perhaps you create a page, an account just for your work, just for your portfolio. Keep it very on brand, very curated, and then tag. You know, you want GQ to see it, you want an actor to see it, you want Hollywood to see it, tag all of them in it. Eventually something could happen, or that's just part of it at least, or, you know, part of the whole package.
I mean, it's true. We all have this direct portal to one another that never existed before. Yeah. It's really kind of crazy that you can access somebody so immediately nowadays.
And it's free.
Yeah, definitely a great tool.
Yeah.
I know.
So one more question, and it's also from our student, and I really love this question because you've lived in Atlanta and you've lived in LA. So the question is, Atlanta, New York City, or LA? Which city is the best for one to further continue their careers? So Atlanta, New York, or LA, which is the best city to continue to further or continue your career?
You know what? I've never lived in New York. I've spent significant time in New York, but I've never lived there. So I imagine my experience of Atlanta and LA would be very different for people. It would be very different for somebody who's, you know, maybe a transplant to Atlanta than the experience that I've had here, which is from the perspective of somebody who's grown up here. And same thing for LA, because I didn't grow up in LA, so I was kind of like a newcomer. But what I love about Atlanta is that it is not necessarily dominated by the creative industry the way that LA feels like it's totally dominated by. You know, everybody goes to LA, it seems, to work somewhere within the film business or in some way, shape, or form in an industry that's going to touch the film business. I know that that's a massive generalization, but that was the experience that I felt like I had when I first got there, which worked really well for me because that's what I was doing. And that was great. And there was a lot of opportunity and ability to meet people. But you also have a far larger pool of competition because everybody's going for the same reason that you are. Whereas I felt like if I ever wanted to come back to Atlanta, it was going to be a very friendly place for me to pursue whatever my dreams were, because I had such a humble, wonderful, kind group of people that I had grown up with. My community here was incredibly gracious to one another. I mean, if you start a business here, odds are you're going to have massive, massive support from the community. Whereas LA felt a little tougher, and you had to be like very, very crafty and very like, you know, you had to like kind of, I don't know, maneuver well within the stress of the rat race. Which some people really thrive within and some people don't. Atlanta feels like a kinder place if you are interested in working in the creative field, also because not everybody is in a creative field here. So, but New York, I feel like New York, from my experience of people that have lived there, it's a little bit of both. It's a little bit more kind of rough and tumble. You see what you get. There isn't a whole lot of airs being put on by people. You just kind of, you know, you work hard and that's what leads. It's less about aesthetic as it is about your work ethic. So I don't know, I kind of wonder if we'll move there at some point in the future, just to kind of like get that experience too. But no, I'd say if it's between the three cities, LA is an amazing, it's responsible for so many wonderful things in my life, but I always love Atlanta for the reasons that I listed. I think it's always got my heart.
I kind of look, you know, I kind of look at, and I agree with you about Atlanta, but I look at LA for film, even though Atlanta obviously is huge now for film. I look at New York for fashion, but what is Atlanta? We are also the hub of all the airlines, it seems. I mean, we are the biggest or busiest airport in the world. So even if you live in Atlanta, you are just a flight away from New York or LA. So, you know,
it's true. It's true. We do more central here for sure. I mean, we're more central living in Atlanta than we were in LA.
Yeah. Well, you are just the queen of wisdom and advice. Thank you for your generous responses to our student. But
thank you. I love the questions from the students. That's so wonderful. I love that piece of this interview. What a great thing. Because I know that I was hungry for knowledge from people who are working and already out of school when I was in school. So that's wonderful that you're doing that.
Well, let's go back to Midheaven though, because I want to know more about your brand, and I know it's been expanding. So you started with denim, but that's the keyword is start. So it's really going places. So please tell us what is in the future for you and Midheaven.
So when you're running a small business, you really rely on the money that you're making to put back into the company to keep it going. That's one thing that you either can stand or you can't.
Yeah.
And so everything that we've made up until this point, we are reinvesting back into the company. We're always trying to, grow and expand without growing too fast and making too much, because the industry is changing so much, especially with COVID this last year. It's been so challenging to know how much to make, how to make it, by the way, because we import our fabric from Italy. So when Europe was on lockdown, our company was essentially on lockdown, because if you go to the website, you can see why we use the fabric that we do. Yeah, it was very important for me to stay loyal to the company that we buy fabric
Absolutely.
from because of their work in sustainability, and just the quality is wonderful. It's why people buy from Midheaven, because of the quality of the fabric. But with, it's kind of like you want to make a little bit, but you don't want to make too much. I'm constantly trying to figure out where that sweet spot is. That being said, this last year of focusing on our existing, aesthetic for Midheaven, what we've created up until this point, really communicating with our customers, seeing what they want. It's been a really nice breathing period to be like, okay, where are we going to take this thing? Where do we want to just continue to be only a denim company, or do we want to grow outside of that? So I've put some incredible people in place to help me do that at the pace that I'm most comfortable with. And everything is being worked on right now, which is so wonderful. So we are growing our collection. We're growing into the athletic wear, part of my brain, the loungewear part of my brain. We're doing a line of dresses next year. We're also collaborating with a couple brands that I can't really mention yet, but some really interesting collaborations that are in the works right now. We just launched a collaboration with Cynthia Rowley out of New York, and that was so wildly successful for us and for her that it was just like, okay, we need to do more. So we're doing more with her.
Well, that's wonderful.
Yeah, so we're slowly but surely trying to grow this company. And we're not, by the way, we're not just the tall girl jean company anymore. We make everything in 2 inseams. So if you are not tall,
thank you for saying that.
There's something for you. Yeah. So it's, it's interesting, from a product offering perspective, there's a lot of wiggle room. There's a lot of options. You can make everything. But I think what resonates for people most when they're like, okay, how do I identify this company? What box do I put it in? You do have to do one thing and do it really well. So the cornerstone of the business is always going to be our long inseams, and being able to provide the taller customer with something beautiful to wear. But that being said, there's a lot of creativity that can, be incorporated here. And I really have this whole vision of incorporating my love of film with fashion. And so there's a lot of content that we're working on right now that satisfies that. And I can't wait to launch all of it. It'll probably be like mid next year.
So I'm going to give you a totally self-indulged, idea because I'm being selfish.
Okay.
Here, but maybe
I'd love to hear.
When you're designing your line of athleisure wear, maybe a few pieces are gender fluid. So maybe some of the boys can also wear Midheaven.
I get this question all the time. When are you going to do menswear? There's truly no reason why we haven't thus far, other than I've just got a toddler and another one on the way. And, it's like, what can I do? What's my capacity right now? But you're right. You're absolutely right.
You start small, though.
Yes.
You start small. Yes,
we've got gender fluid wear on the way. I promise you. It's coming.
Thank you. I'm going to hold you to that, Kathryn. Well, I cannot thank you enough for joining us today. And you just mentioned that, yes, you have another little angel on the way. And I really cannot thank you enough for making time for us, because, you're due any day now. So, really,
Oh yeah, she's like all up in my ribs right now. Josh. I'm surprised I didn't get out of breath during this interview. She's like scrunching my lungs, in a pretty major way. Yeah, she's on the way in the next 2 weeks for sure. So I'm happy we were able to do this now.
Camera. I think she wants to be in front of the camera, Kathryn. That's a sign.
Oh Lord. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, really, congrats to you and Josh. This is, it's really wonderful, just in time for the holidays. So, good luck.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. This was so wonderful.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, goodbye, Kathryn.
Okay, bye.